it's Lindy. This is the second video in our movement improvement series on low bone density, also known as osteoporosis and osteopenia. There's quite a bit of talk, we hear it quite often at the studio here from people who say, well, I don't really have osteoporosis, I only have osteopenia, so I don't necessarily need to modify or change the way that I move. And this actually is a bit of a fallacy, and there's still, there's not a lot of information out there amongst the general population, which includes our healthcare practitioners, about what low bone density means in terms of how it affects and impacts our movement. So let's just talk about that for a minute. If you go and get a bone density screening, a scan, you'll normally come back with a result. And the result is just, a number that gives you a comparison to the rest of the population, if you will. So from that number, your doctor's gonna say, hey, you have osteoporosis or you have osteopenia. Both of those diagnoses really mean that you've lost bone density in parts of your body. Now, sometimes it might be that they're doing a simple test and they're just looking at it in your heel bone. A more comprehensive test, they're gonna look at various joints in your body. Just because you have a diagnosis in one particular joint in your body, let's say it's in one hip, does not mean that you don't have it in other parts of the body. And the biggest place here at the studio in the Pilates world that we get, that we want to identify and protect is the area known as the thoracic spine, this part of the body, also where the ribs attach. So anywhere where your ribs attach into the back of your spine, that's called your thoracic spine. And this is the area of the spine that's most vulnerable to fracture if you have low bone density. So let's talk about why. You might be wondering why I have this lovely sponge in my hand. This is just a bit of a metaphor for what can happen as the bones lose density. You may have heard that they also get brittle. And the brittleness is actually one of the biggest factors that can contribute to having problems, fractures with the bones. So it's not just that the bones are losing density, like we talked about the pile of sand analogy in the last video. It's also that they're brittle. So this is kind of a dried out sponge that I grabbed from home this morning. And imagine if I put load through this pretty firm dried out sponge, it's gonna break somewhere. So you can sort of see, right? If I do that, it gets a little bend in it in one place. If this were a bone, that would be a break. Now, what would happen if I filled this sponge up with water? It would be more resilient. It would be able to take load throughout. It would be less brittle and less likely to break in one place. Now, this isn't exactly scientifically accurate, but you can kind of think of that analogy as a way to think about healthy bones versus low density bones. Low density bones are more likely, because of the brittleness and the fact that they have less cells in them to distribute load, they're more likely to break. And the place in the body that we're most concerned about is the thoracic spine. This area of the body can't be measured with any of our current imaging. So if you have a diagnosis of low bone density anywhere in your body, we have to assume as teachers that you're vulnerable in your thoracic spine. And if you sort of picture this position, right, that a lot of us tend to go into, that's actually where we're putting the most load on these vertebrae in our thoracic spine. We'll talk more in the next video about what you can do about it and the modifications that we recommend for you when you're in class. In the meantime, I recommend that you go read more about this at the National Osteoporosis Foundation website. It's nof.org if you're interested in reading more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.